It's one of the deadliest structural failures in history. A shopping mall, like so many others, filled with people on their way home from work. When the unthinkable happens. "500 are killed. Hundreds more are trapped and fighting for survival. Yet there's no sign of an earthquake, no terrorist bomb, no apparent reason in the rubble. A building has simply collapsed under its own weight without any apparent warning. And the question is, what caused such a catastrophic failure? They're symbols of the modern world. Soaring structures made of concrete, steel, and glass. Every one of these gravity-defying, multi-level buildings is a marvel of engineering. And in every one of them, attention is paid to the smallest details of construction. Especially the details designed to keep them standing. When it comes to a building, what goes up should never come down. Unless it's being brought down on purpose. In a planned demolition, the support system that carries the building's weight to the ground is shattered with explosives. It isn't often a building collapses on its own. But when it does, the world takes notice. Thursday evening, June 29, 1995, in Seoul, South Korea. More than 1,000 shoppers are making a last stop at the city's ritzy Sampoong shopping mall. Sampoong has been standing for more than 5 years, the latest in mall designs. Every day, as many as 40,000 people pass through its many levels of luxury shops, with their lavish selection of Western goods. Most of them have never given a thought to the safety of the building around them, or imagined that its top 5 stories could suddenly come crashing down. But that's exactly what's about to happen. A few minutes before 6 p.m., there are about 1,500 people inside the building. Many of them in the underground levels, where the daily food sales are underway. They have no idea that above them, the structural integrity of the building is beginning to fail, and that thousands of tons of suspended concrete are about to encounter the law of gravity. For most shoppers, the only warning sign is a dull roar coming from above.
We heard an echoing sound, like the sound of a train coming.
In the basement, panicked customers run for cover. High above them, the 5th floor has just pulled away from the roof. As each concrete floor drops, it rips away the floor beneath it, all the way down through the 4 underground levels. It's over in less than 20 seconds. The entire north wing of the Sampoong shopping mall is now a heap of broken concrete and twisted steel, covering half a city block. Parts of the store, like the side towers, which housed elevators and emergency stairs, still stand. The people inside had only seconds to escape. On the 5 upper levels, hundreds have been killed. Hundreds more are trapped beneath a mountain of smoldering debris, crying out for help. No one knows the situation on the lower levels. The news of the disaster begins to spread around the world, where builders and engineers are all asking the same question. How could it have happened?
There was no evidence of a gas explosion. There was no evidence of a terrorist bomb. There was no evidence of a plane crash. There was no evidence for a structure to perish under its own weight is a real shocker to the engineering community.
Within hours of the disaster, a team of forensic engineers arrives to look for answers. Most of them can't believe their eyes.
완전히 땅속으로 꺼져버린 상태.
It was as if the building had simply evaporated.
건물이 거기에.
For a moment, I even doubted that there was ever a building there at all. And in that moment, I was filled with a great sense of shame for my profession.
Had some flaw in the design doomed the 5-year-old building? Was it an engineering mistake? While investigators are asking those questions, the search for survivors is ramping up. Emergency workers from all over the city race to the scene. Firefighter Kyung Il-jong is one of the first to arrive.
현장에 도착해 보니까
It felt like I was looking at a scene from a war zone.
느낌을 받았습니다.
It was so brutal and devastating.
죽어 있는 사람들,
All the dead bodies.
살아 있는 사람들과 아우성.
To this day, I can still hear the screams of the survivors.
It's hard to imagine that anyone is still alive in the center of the pile. So Kyung-il and the other rescuers begin combing the edges. No one knows how many people are trapped alive in the rubble, badly injured, running out of air. Emergency crews will have to dig through tons of shifting concrete quickly. One wrong move could trigger another collapse. It's hazardous work for rescuers and victims alike. Live electrical wires snake through the site. Pieces of debris catch fire. Toxic smoke clogs the air and slows rescuers down. At this rate, they'll need days to reach the 4 basement sublevels. They have no way of knowing that at the very bottom, entombed beneath countless tons of concrete and steel, is 19-year-old Seong-young Park. Just a few minutes earlier, she'd been at her job as a sales clerk in the children's department. It was located on the 1st basement floor at the northeast end of the building. There weren't as many customers as usual, maybe because of the heat. It was summertime, and the air conditioning was off, apparently because of some trouble on the roof.
그런 소문만 있었어요. 그냥 금이 내려는.
I heard rumors that they were having problems on the 5th floor and had closed it off because the roof was sagging. Nobody heard anything about the possibility that the building might collapse.
It was a little before 6 when she heard something above her that sounded like a train. Sampoong Park made a dash for the stairs, but never got there. She has no idea how much time has passed before she regains consciousness and finds herself completely hemmed in by rubble. It's almost completely dark, and she can't hear a sound. Aside from a few scrapes and bruises, she doesn't think she's been injured. So she tells herself to stay calm and wait for the rescue teams to reach her.
그렇게 무너졌을 거란 생각 못
I had
하고
no way of knowing that the whole building had collapsed.
그냥
I thought it was probably just the ceiling above my own department. So I expected that I would be rescued before too long, that someone would come and pull me out.
In fact, Sung-hyung lies pinned on what remains of the first basement, near the bottom of the pile, with the weight of 5 floors above her. On the surface, rescuers are coming across more survivors and redouble their efforts. In the next few hours, they'll find even more. But they know time is running out for many of those still trapped. Watching the rescuers go about their work, the investigators are already trying to figure out what went wrong. The most obvious culprit? The concrete. It wouldn't be the first time shoddy construction materials were implicated in a building's collapse. It happened in Turkey in 1999, when the country was hit by a massive 7.4 earthquake. Roughly 100,000 buildings were destroyed, many of them constructed with poor quality concrete. At the site of the Sampoong implosion, the concrete in the surviving walls looked suspiciously porous. It could be a sign the builders used too much water when it was mixed. Samples from the site are taken to the lab and subjected to extreme pressures. It holds. There's nothing wrong with the concrete. That means something else triggered the collapse. To find out what it was, investigators will have to examine Sampoong before it fell. Something must have gone wrong in the beginning to lead to such a catastrophic end. And the clues lie buried in the rubble. South Koreans are stunned as they learn the extent of the calamity at the Sampoong shopping center in Seoul, Korea. By the second day, it's clear that the dead will number in the hundreds, and experts the world over are mystified by what happened.
Everybody wanted to understand right away what went on. When a normal, everyday, workaday building comes down, everybody is shocked. It's rare, and it just should not happen.
Buildings like Sampoong are found all over the world, and more are springing up every day. Whether they're used in an apartment house, an office, or a mall, the engineering principles that went into Sampoong's design are well known, with a proven track record. Engineers call it flat slab construction. It's an architectural workhorse. Safe, relatively inexpensive, and extremely reliable.
Frankly, it is a terribly forgiving structural design to screw up. You have to work so hard to screw up a flat slab building. You have to do something really stupid.
Flat slab construction starts at the bottom and builds up. When one floor is complete, concrete columns are poured to support the next floor. Inside the concrete and connecting the building's floors and columns are hundreds of steel rods known as rebar. To engineers, this mixture of concrete and steel is a marriage made in heaven.
It's one of God's gifts to the engineering world that steel and concrete have exactly the same coefficient of thermal expansion. You can put steel and concrete and heat them both and cool them both, and they expand uniformly. So the concrete doesn't crack off the steel or the steel doesn't pull out of the concrete. That's a miracle. You know, most people don't appreciate that. That is a miracle.
In flat slab construction, the weight or load of the floors is shared by the rebar and concrete in the columns. The columns then conduct the load of every floor to the ground. In a healthy building, the load can take many different routes to solid earth. These concrete and rebar columns are extremely strong and durable. There's no reason a flat slab building should ever collapse. And yet, one did. Why? The building's blueprints provide the first clue. It turns out Sampoong's problems began as soon as construction started. At first, the owners planned to build an office building. But once construction got underway, they decided they wanted a shopping mall instead. When their builders refused to meet their demands, the owners fired them and handed the job over to their own construction company, which saw no problem with the new plans.
흔히 일어납니다. 그러나 그것은
Changing how a building is going to be used isn't really unusual.
전문가 스트럭처 엔지니어의
But in the case of Sampoong, the communication between architects and engineers was too casual.
백화점은 그런 것들이
That's a fundamental mistake.
무시됐고 잘못돼도 많이 잘못된 것입니다.
To create open areas for merchandise, the new builders removed the dividing walls. Then they cut a shaft to install an escalator. And finally, they changed the size and shape of the support columns. In flat slab buildings like Sampoong, the columns are crucial. But Sampoong's designers didn't follow the standard load calculations. The design blueprints reveal the chilling details. The new builders reduced the size of the support columns by 25%, narrowing each one from 31 to 23 inches. Near the escalators, the builders cut the columns even more. Was that the reason Sampoong collapsed? Was it possible one small change in an otherwise rock-solid design had cost so many people their lives? If so, it wouldn't be the first time. 1981, Kansas City, Missouri. The Hyatt Regency Hotel's lobby is crammed with couples for the Friday evening tea dance. Spectators on the lowest of the three skywalks followed the action below. There's no way the dancers can know that the building around them is fatally flawed, or that a single bolt is about to fail and usher in disaster.
Pop, pop. It sounds like metal hitting metal. Pop, pop.
The popping sound is a bolt experiencing a catastrophic failure. The topmost skywalk falls, smashes through the one beneath it, and hits the crowded dance floor. "114 people are killed. hundreds more are injured. It's the most disastrous structural failure of any building in U.S. history. TV reporter Michael Mahoney was filming at the Hyatt that night.
You believe that when you go into a building that it's going to be relatively safe, that it's put together well. When something like this happens, it's a betrayal of trust.
So what exactly went wrong? After the collapse, engineer Wayne Lishka investigated the disaster for the Kansas City Star. He discovered that just like Sampoong, a design change was made during construction. How the skywalks would hang from the ceiling. Instead of using one rod to hold both walkways, the builders used two, a modification that somehow never got tested.
This was something that was just so minor that nobody bothered to ever look at it. And they never looked at it from day one.
Over time, a rod that held the top skywalk to the ceiling began to tear into its base. Then, finally, it slipped through.
Once the weld started to unzip, it just came down. That it unzipped the night of the tea dance was just chance. It could have unzipped 2 weeks after the thing were built, or it could have lasted another several years. It was an accident waiting to happen.
Sampoong was also an accident waiting to happen. But the investigators aren't convinced the slimmed-down support columns were the building's only Achilles heel. To find out what else might have gone wrong, investigators calculate how much load the building was carrying. The results are stunning. Records show that the owners originally obtained a permit for a 4-story structure. But Sampoong was 5 floors tall. The owners had added an entire 5th story, another 3,000 tons of concrete, without strengthening the support columns. And there was more weight to come. When the building opened, most of the 5th floor was leased to restaurants and their heavy kitchen equipment. Then, to accommodate traditional Korean eateries, the owners increased the 5th floor's load even more by installing heaters under the floor to keep customers comfortable. That meant adding an extra 1-foot thick layer of concrete. Did all that extra weight on the columns cause them to buckle, bringing the whole building down? Investigators know that other clues lie scattered around the site, but they can't get to them until the rescue work is done. And there's no telling when that might be. A few days after the collapse, they're still finding bodies, but not much else. Hope is beginning to dwindle that anyone beneath the pile could have survived. But at least one person trapped beneath them is still holding on to life. And there may be others. The fact that anyone could survive in such a disaster may seem miraculous. But a person inside a collapsing building has one thing going for them. The concrete often breaks into large slabs. The cascading slabs come to rest against stairs or other objects. And in these isolated sanctuaries, the lucky can avoid being crushed or suffocated, at least for a time. When Sampoong collapsed, 19-year-old sales clerk Sung Hyung Park ran for the stairs. and ended up in an air pocket. She's not sure how long she's been there. Every so often, she calls out for help and hears only silence in return. Smoke from fires burning nearby drifts into her tiny cave. She tells herself the rescue teams must be getting closer. If she could only let them know where she was.
There were all kinds of things strewn about on the floor beneath me. I groped around and found a piece of broken pipe.
But her banging produces no response. And far above, rescuers are about to make a decision that will put Park in even greater peril. Salvage workers bring in heavy equipment to remove the largest slabs of debris. As they shift the rubble, they risk crushing anyone trapped below. Still sealed within her concrete tomb at the bottom of the pile, Sung-Young Park drifts in and out of sleep. So far, she's heard nothing but silence. But now she hears the muted sounds of machines far above her. And then she hears something else. On the other side of a fallen beam, a familiar voice drifts in her direction.
아니, 힘내.
It's one of Park's co-workers from the store, hidden behind some rubble.
건이랑 얘기를 한 게 건이가 너무
She kept telling me that she was badly hurt.
너무 아프다고 살려달라고.
She kept begging me to help her.
살려달라고 막 그렇게 애원하고.
I told her to stay calm and not to talk too much because it would drain her. But she must have been in terrible pain because she kept talking and crying.
되게 고통스러웠었어요, 건이는.
Meanwhile, above them, rescue workers are about to get a much-needed morale boost. They find a young salesman from the shoe department. For more than a week, he's been imprisoned in the sweltering darkness. But 21-year-old Myung Suk Choi is not only alive, he's uninjured. It's a powerful reminder that others may still be clinging to life in the levels that haven't been reached. The rescuers intensify their efforts. But below them, time has run out for one of the victims. Sung-Young Park's friend and co-worker has fallen silent.
그 언니가 죽었다는 생각을 했을 때.
She must have died.
나중에 사람들 목소리 났을 때도 무섭지.
But even then, I never thought that I was going to die.
정말로 계속 잠이
I was never frightened.
저도 그게 왜 그런지.
I just kept closing my eyes and falling asleep.
그게 막 불안하거나 나는 죽을 거야.
I thought eventually they were bound to find me.
잠이 잘 오지 않았는데.
It's now been 2 weeks since the collapse. And for the investigators, it's time to find some answers. They shift their attention from the overloaded 5th floor to the roof and find more miscalculations and mistakes. To cool the store's wide-open spaces, the owners had placed 3 huge air conditioners on the roof. Together, they weigh 36 tons when they're empty. When filled with fluids in the summer, their weight almost triples to 87 tons. 4 times what the roof was designed to support. When the builder's load calculations are checked, it's clear that they failed to compensate for all the additional weight. In fact, they did the worst possible thing. They thinned the columns meant to carry it. the list of mistakes made by the builders is growing. Yet in spite of the errors, Sampoong's basic design was so solid that it remained standing for more than 5 years. But Sampoong was in distress. And when a building is in distress, it lets people know. There were warning signs at the Sampoong Mall, and they were ignored. Why?
Typically, a steel-reinforced concrete building can't just arbitrarily collapse. It has to start cracking. It has to start spalling. It has to start breaking. Now, you can ignore the building, of course, but typically it gives you a lot of warning that it's in trouble.
Typically, but not always. Sometimes a building gives almost no warning at all. That was the case in a much celebrated structure outside of Paris. 2003, the Roissy Charles de Gaulle Airport is undergoing a transformation. Its spacious new terminals are the state-of-the-art in building design. The newest is Terminal 2E. The roof of its long, expansive concourse seems to float on air.
When you're inside the structure, it appears to be staying up by magic because all the parts that are creating the illusion are on the outside of the structure.
Steel fingers and struts squeeze the terminal's elliptical roof from the sides, keeping it aloft. It's an ingeniously designed structure that's destined to fail. 11 months after it opens, tiny cracks appear in the wall. A chunk of cement falls. Terminal officials quickly decide to cordon off the area. But moments later, part of the roof of Terminal 2E collapses. 4 people are killed. Like so many modern designs, the building plans for the Charles de Gaulle terminal had no previous track record. Technology and safety margins were stretched to their limit, but there were few signs the building was in danger. But that wasn't the case at Sampoong. At Sampoong, the warning signs were everywhere. On the afternoon of the disaster, diners in a restaurant on the 5th floor spot cracks in the ceiling. It's worse in the kitchen. Dust is falling, and the floor has begun to sag. A table tilts ominously. The restaurant alerts the building's owners. They call in a building inspector. The inspector takes a first-hand look at the damaged roof and the worrisome tilt of the kitchen floor, which were captured in photographs the previous day. He declares the building unsafe and suggests an immediate evacuation. But the owners are convinced that the trouble is confined to the roof. So to protect it from the vibrations of the building's air conditioners, they order them shut off. A worker is brought in to repair the ceiling cracks, and the 5th floor is closed until the work is complete. Then the owners move their own valuables to the basement, and they themselves leave the building. But they decide the other floors should remain open for business. The owners never give their employees any inkling that they might be in danger.
It's clear they knew the building was in distress. It was a fatally dying structure, and they still left people in it.
It's 16 days after Sampoong's collapse. With little hope of finding any more survivors, workers are attacking the rubble with a vengeance. They never imagined that one young woman is miraculously still struggling for her life beneath them. Or that now they're in danger of crushing her. For many days, Sunghyung Park has been drifting in and out of consciousness. Now, the sound of the machines above brings new hope. But neither her voice nor her small metal pipe can compete with the racket overhead. Then, the pile suddenly shifts. It's collapsing under the weight of the machinery. Park's concrete coffin is slowly closing in around her. The last victim of a building that had been failing slowly but inexorably for years. Yet something, one final mistake, had pushed it over the edge. As investigators are about to find out. The investigation into the collapse of the Sampoong shopping mall has uncovered a shocking number of misjudgments and shortcuts. The miscalculations include reducing the building's support columns by 25%, shaving the columns by the escalators even more, adding an extra story, and filling it with heavy equipment. There was also a problem with the drop panels, which strengthened the column-to-slab connection. But these drop panels simply weren't strong enough. Roger McCarthy demonstrates how the principle works.
I'm simulating the effect of putting reinforcing bar between the column and what's going to be the floor structure.
The small circular tabs play the part of the drop panels.
Now I'm going to take the floor, put it on our building, and voila, we have a building. I'm using water now to simulate the weight addition to the structure. If this were a department store, this could be merchandise. There is tremendous redundancy between the pillars that support the load.
If a column fails, the distribution of load will keep the structure standing.
I have completely removed a column. And you can see the other columns pick up the load of the floor and still conduct it down to the foundation.
But if a drop panel fails, the results are different. At Sampoong, the drop panels held for 5 years. Then the columns started to punch through to the roof. A photograph taken the day before the collapse shows the extent of the damage. And the mistakes didn't stop there. Instead of tying in the floors with L-shaped rebar, the builders only extended the rebar a few inches into the walls. That meant that once a collapse started, there was little to slow it down. Was it simply that too much load over too long a time put too much strain on the building? Or was there one final straw that had doomed the Sampoong shopping center? Three clues lie amid the rubble. The building's massive air conditioners. To cool their spacious shopping mall, Sampoong's owners had placed 3 29-ton air coolers on its roof. They weigh 4 times what the roof is designed to carry. That's when the final mistake is made. When the cooling system is on, neighbors complain about the noise. Nearly 2 years before the collapse, the owners decide to move them. But to save money, they make a disastrous error. They don't use a crane. Instead, they put the blocks on rollers and push them to the other side. The heavy air coolers splinter and crack the roof from one end to the other.
I'm appalled at how fast and loose they were playing with the physics. You can't defy the laws of physics, and that's what you're attempting to do here.
A fractured concrete roof cannot transfer its load efficiently onto its supporting columns. Over time, it sags. Then the columns below begin to punch through. The photo of the roof, taken the day before the collapse, clearly shows the extent of the damage.
Actually, it's surprising it stood up for 5.5 years.
신기할 정도로.
June 29th, 1995. 22 months after its roof was hopelessly damaged, the building can take no more. In the afternoon, the columns on the 5th floor begin to punch through. In the restaurant, the table tilts ominously. As the 5th floor droops, it pulls on the weakened roof. The fractures deepen. Cracks appear in the restaurant's ceiling below. Then, just before 6 p.m., the final cascade of events. The 5th floor, where the columns are thinnest around the escalator, gives way first. As it falls, it drags the roof down with it. The top 2 floors of the Sampoong shopping mall are in motion. Nothing below can stop them.
Very quickly, you see what happens. Everything is in the basement in no time.
And beneath it all is 19-year-old sales clerk Sung-Young Park, who believes she's been buried for about 5 days. But in fact, it's been 16, with no food and little water. It may be the longest anyone has ever survived under a collapsed building. Above her, workers continue their salvage operation, with no expectation of finding anyone else alive. But they're actually digging just above Sung-Young Park. Then, suddenly, a blast of sunlight. The workers have taken the lid off her concrete tomb with a steam shovel.
포크레인이 바로 제 얼굴로 이렇게 왔기 때문에
The crane came towards my face. I didn't have time to think.
제가
I might have been severely injured or even killed.
상황이었기 때문에
So I cried out, "Help!"
칠 수밖에 없었어요.
Workers hear a cry, but at first, they can't see anyone.
바깥에서 저한테
They asked me, "Is there anyone in there?"
왔어요. 제가 사람이
A
있다고.
worker dug around the hole with his hands. Then we could see each other, and I realized I was going to make it out alive.
Sung-Hyun Park is pulled from the rubble. Amazingly, she's not seriously hurt. Her undying optimism and uncanny luck have pulled her through. She spends a month in the hospital regaining her strength. But in time, she recovers fully. She's one of about 1,000 people who escaped the Sampoong disaster with their lives. But 501 others didn't make it. When the details behind the collapse become public, South Koreans are outraged. The building's owner and his son are convicted of criminal negligence and sent to prison. Investigators also discover that to get their store built, the owners bribed officials. 12 government inspectors also receive prison sentences. The government orders a check of all recent construction and toughens building codes. And why did the owners do what they did? At the time time of the collapse, Sampoong was taking in hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. As Sunghyung Park sees it, it came down to one thing: money.
그러니까 이제 와서 생각해보면
Looking back on it now, I think it's something that just cannot happen.
생각을 하거든요, 그거는.
I think in the very end, it's all about one person's greed.
The bottom line is this: buildings are supposed to stay upright, and they almost always do. But as the buildings of the future continue to go up, with their radical designs and untested engineering, we are nearing the limits of what we can safely accomplish.
Anytime you take a design closer and closer to the limit of the material, and any time you shrink a factor of safety, with each foot closer to the edge of the cliff, place each foot down very carefully.
The 21st century is sure to be filled with marvels of engineering that seem to stay standing by magic. We can only hope that they're well designed and well built. And when a building starts speaking to us, we should listen before it's too late.